Hi everyone, welcome to the Urban Sewing Society where we bring fashion and creativity to your neighborhood. My name is Jen and I am the Urban Sewist. And today's refashioning project is centered around denim jackets. I mean, this is a project that I have admired from afar for a long time. I've watched tons of people do it. I know you've seen people do it before, but this is the first time that I'm getting a chance to actually do it for myself. So I want to share it with you and take you through the process. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you click that subscribe button below and also click on that bell so that you can receive an alert every time I put out a new video. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter because I'm always pushing out new ideas and products. So please check us out there. Okay, so now we're going to get started with our basic denim jacket. And once we go through this project, you'll be able to use all different kinds of media to get the project done. But I'm going to show you the way I decided to do it, and then you can decide to do it. I'll also talk a little bit about how it can be a no-sew project. I'm personally going to sew it because that's what I'm most comfortable with. But if you want to do a no-sew, you can definitely do that. Like, it's so easy. All right, so let's get started with supplies. So here we have a basic denim jacket, nothing fancy about it, no pockets, basic flap pockets with buttons in them, just your standard jacket. And here I am just laying the jean jacket out. You want to turn it inside out and lay it pretty flat. You're going to make sure you're working on a flat surface because it's really, really important that it's flat. Now, some people will go ahead and cut first, but I prefer laying everything out nice and smooth before we get started. You're going to have about 3/4 yard of fabric to work with, which should be sufficient. What I did was I used double-sided tape along the seams to help hold my fabric down. You'll find that as we move forward, this wasn't necessarily the best idea, but I thought it would be good to help keep my fabric in place. What ended up working for me really well was just pinning the fabric. So as you see, I have this beautiful butterfly fabric. Butterflies are my favorite. And I am turning the right side of the fabric against the wrong side of the jacket and just pressing it down right on top of the double-sided tape. Then I'm going to take my pins and I'm going to start to pin the fabric to the jacket. And I just place them sporadically along the inside, as you'll see here. After I have pinned that all the way around along the seams, I start to cut just on the outside of the seam, giving myself a healthy seam allowance. This is important because you want to have enough fabric to fold over and stitch. This will help to secure the fabric into the seam, and it also makes sure that it kind of overlaps with the other piece that you're going to sew next to it. So I carefully cut around each piece, and there we go. Next, I decided to work on the back center panel because initially I thought I would just do the back center panel and the front side panels, and then that would be it. But of course, you know me, I've got to go all the way, especially with this beautiful butterfly fabric. So I decided to just do all the panels. And in the end, I really, really love the way it turned out. Next, I turn to the yoke area, and this part can be a little more difficult because it is smaller and it's got a little bit of a curve right on the shoulder. So I just made sure the jean jacket was laying really flat and put the fabric on top of it, laid it out, and started to pin it. For the no-sew project, I would recommend just putting the glue around the seams, laying the fabric on top, and maybe getting a fan to dry before you start to cut. So maybe I'll show that in another video, just kind of how to do the no-sew, but I did want to let you know that that's one of the easy ways to do this project, is just to put the glue on the seams, lay the fabric on top, let it dry completely, and then cut around it. I recommend really taking your time when you pin the fabric to the inside of the jacket. You want to make sure that everything is laying nice and flat. After getting all of the fabric applied to the back of the inside of the jacket, I took the jacket to the sewing machine, and like I said, I started sewing on top and matching up the lines, the stitch lines with my own stitch lines, and pulling the pins out as I went. And this didn't work really well for me. One of the reasons, the pins started sticking me. I started bleeding on one of my fingers. It was a mess. And so the first panel I ended up stitching just like you see here. And then eventually I flipped it over and I started to stitch from the inside, and it was much easier, a much cleaner finish. As you can see here, I flipped it over and started stitching around all of the seams, and it went so much faster, so much easier. I pulled out the pins along the way. I was able to stretch the fabric to make sure it was laying nice and flat, and finish this, I would say, within about maybe 30 to 45 minutes. So once you flip the jacket inside out again, you want to begin to start to separate the denim jacket from the fabric, and you want to be very careful. You make a slight little clip in the fabric and then begin to cut very closely to the seam, and you want to do that all the way around as I'm showing here. Be careful not to clip the fabric underneath. I recommend holding the fabric underneath with your hand and just clipping very closely to the seam all the way around. And just take your time. This may take a few minutes to get done because you want to make sure that you're not cutting that fabric up underneath, and you want to make sure that you're making nice clean cuts. Even though some of this is going to unravel a little bit when you wash it and put it in the dryer, it will start to fray, which also adds to another element of style for the jacket. I actually don't mind much when I get fraying in the denim. So this is one of those things that you'll find once you get some wear out of the jacket. So here I'm making my last little cut along the edge around the collar, and I think it looks so nice already. Even just having this block there is enough. You don't necessarily have to go further, but I wanted to keep going. And so here we go, just checking my seams, pulling it apart, making a little cut right next to the seam just so that I can stick my scissors in there, and then I began to cut the rest of the way. Continue to cut along the seams all the way through the garment. You'll go in and out and around as close as you can get to the seams without cutting the seams. You want to have a nice clean finish there. Total time that it took me to cut this entire jacket out might have been about 15 or 20 minutes, because there were some seams that I got to and I realized I missed some portions of the fabric, so I went back to the sewing machine just to reinforce. But I'm really pleased with the way it turned out in the end. And please don't throw away those scraps. I had a little leftover fabric and I thought, you know, I need to make this jacket uniquely me. So I took the leftover fabric, folded it in half to make two long rectangular pieces, and I'll show you what I ended up doing with those two long strips of fabric. I think it was a nice little touch to make it unique for me. So I took those long rectangular strips and sewed them together at the end, turned them inside out, ran a basting stitch across the top, and then I turned my jacket sleeves inside out and took those rectangular strips and began to attach them to the inside of the sleeve, making little pleats. And I thought this would really look cute by having a little bit of a pop of color around the wrist, kind of like my blouse was hanging out underneath it, or just to give a little different kind of style. And again, I really love the way this turned out. I can't tell you how excited I am about the way this jacket turned out. It is so flipping cute to me. And I love this butterfly fabric that I found, and I love that I put the little pop of color at the end of my sleeves along the wrist, and I also added my initial in the back of my jacket. You can put whatever you like there. I just skipped over the tag. I didn't cut the tag out. I left it in there, and I just love it. And if you enjoyed this video, please click that subscribe button below. Thanks.